Namaskara and welcome to BIC Talks, a podcast by Bangalore International Centre, bringing you conversations that move, inform, and encourage discourse.
Just before coming to Vandana, I just want to say one thing about Rani is that, she always repeats this whenever we are chatting, and she says, when I started playing hockey, everyone said, बहुत बदनामी होगा तुम्हारा, to her parents, बदनाम कर देगी लड़की, किसी के साथ भाग जाएगी, क्या sport खेलेगी. That's the country we live in. I don't think, people will say this to a male athlete. Would anyone have told this to Neeraj or Abhinav Bindra that if you let your boy play sport, किसी लड़की के साथ भाग जाएगी, that. But to a girl, they say that, and Rani was so conscious about this her entire life that she's like, Didi, if I ended up doing that, I know, a generation of girls wouldn't be allowed to come and play sport. That's the effect it would have. So, that is the responsibility I'm carrying on my shoulders. And I would never do that, to my parents because of this.
At Tokyo 2020, the Indian women's hockey team made history by reaching the maiden Olympic semifinals. But there was heartbreak. However, irrespective of the result, these players had won the hearts of millions of followers in the country. The backstories of these gritty women make for compelling theatre. Who they are, where they come from, how hockey has changed them, and how they have changed the sport. And perhaps more importantly, how their success has changed the lives and the mindset of others back home. An expert panel of sports writers, Sharda Ugra, Manuja Veerappa, and Nandini Kumar, give us a peek into the journeys of the women who make up the Indian hockey team. This episode is an extract from a virtual panel discussion which took place on January 30th, 2022. Over to Manuja.
Say even like 7-8 months ago, if somebody said BIC was hosting a session on women's hockey, I would be like, really? I mean, is that what we're doing? Because I started covering hockey in 2003. By then, Sharda had at least a decade, I would say. I won't stretch it further. So, when I first started covering hockey, especially women's hockey, a lot of people said, oh, a woman is covering women's hockey. What's there? I mean, I think up until the Olympics, even to get 300 words into a newspaper, or Sharda's worked in a magazine, Nandini has worked in a features team, getting those 200, 300 words on women's hockey was always a struggle. And it was with a reason. I'm not going to hold much against people on saying, why didn't you all give women's hockey importance? Yes, we had our moments at the Commonwealth Games, Asian Games, came into the forefront in 1980. But the journey of women's hockey as such has been largely checkered. I think it goes back to a time when they played catch up, much like women's cricket. Unfair again to compare. But there was always that catch up with men. And it's not that the men's hockey wasn't making any rapid strides either. So after 80s. So, bad enough, the men's hockey was always in the background and women didn't even figure in the background. I mean, a lot of people thought when the movie Chakde came in, things would change for the sport. Nothing changed, to be very honest, whether it was perception of the sport. You glamorized it and everybody said, oh, women's hockey exists. But beyond that, it didn't have an impact as such. If it changed careers, it probably changed careers of the real stars of the movie. It became a landmark movie for Shah Rukh Khan. But it precious little for women's hockey as such. But when you go back and see, I'll go back to 2003. It's taken almost, say, 3 decades for women's hockey to reach where it is. The change is primarily, I would pin it to one mindset. I still remember a time when you spoke to women hockey players in India and say Olympics, they would laugh. Hum kahan jayenge didi wahan pe? You didn't have infrastructure. The basic things those ail Indian sport ailed women's hockey as well. But what changed in the last 4 years? Mindset. To a large extent, the administrative changes that came about, the scientific development the sport saw, and also the kind of desire that came into the players and the sacrifices they made. This last 2 decades that I've seen women's hockey, we've gone from saying things like all that we wrote, say, 15 years ago was about struggles. We still write that, about their backstories, about somebody's father was a push carter, another one was a farmer's daughter. Very rarely did we pin down their game. If that is happening, I mean, you can't take away anything from those girls. One little incident I'll tell you about when I say change in mindset. I remember a time, if my memory is correct, around 2005-06, when the Indian women's hockey team revolted in a camp. The reason being, their mobile phones were confiscated. They were a distracted lot at that point of time. So there was a rule that Monday to Friday, they didn't get their phones. And believe me, they nearly got the coach sacked. They had to let go of the manager, though. That was the mindset to a time now when somebody like Vandana didn't attend her father's funeral because the focus was Olympics. You had somebody like Nisha Varsi, whose father was bedridden. They didn't know, each day was a blessing for him, but she didn't miss a day of the camp. Somebody like Rani Rampal, the captain, it starts with her. I've seen that girl over the years, she's had a weak back, many broken bones, but none of it broke her spirit. For me, I think that is where, that sums up women's hockey then and now. So I'll first quickly go on to Sharda. Sharda, your journey with the women's hockey team.
Like you said, Manuja, hello, good evening. Thanks, Manuja, for that insightful talk of what it's like to be on the hockey beat. At the time when you were doing hockey beat, I was with the magazine, so you're just dipping in and out of the hockey stories, which were usually the men's hockey team, some fighting is going on. That was the story. And it would crop up every few months. I can see Nandini's laughing. Nandini will never allow anything of that sort to be published. She's now with Hockey India. She's a very smart person who keeps us all reporters in check. No, but seriously speaking, I think that was the story of hockey that we had. We knew about Rani, who was the most famous individual at the time. And of course, then there was Chak De. And all of us of my age, we have the memory of the Indian women's hockey team in the 1982 Asian Games with a photograph with Rajiv Gandhi, everyone smiling. We won the gold medal. We came fourth at the Olympics, where there was no semi-final. It was 6 teams were taking part in 1980. And it was almost sort of an airbrushed kind of a thing. And from the time that you're seeing it from there to now, I would say this is the foremost sports team that the country has. This is the most formidable sports team that we saw at the Tokyo Olympics. There has never been a sports team of this kind, of like absolutely high quality athletes. That's one thing. And the other is like, there was something very interesting I wanted to just say with regard to women's sports teams, that Aditi Chauhan, who was the goalkeeper of the football team, I was at a talk with one of these sessions, online sessions with her, and she was so inspired by the hockey team's performance. She said, this is what we want to compete like. Look at them. We just watched them through the, they didn't, to them, it didn't matter that they'd lost the first 3 matches. They had a very bad Olympics to start off, and then they came back. That has been so inspirational for athletes across across sports, particularly in team sports where there is, you can see how things play out, and there are all kinds of pulls, pressures, and things that came in the way. One of the aspects that seems more important to me, Manuja, you can perhaps correct me or sort of expand on this, is that the sponsorship that came into Indian hockey from the Orissa government made a big difference in the sense of sending people out to compete and to play and to hire high quality professional help, which is what they did. And as I tell everyone, it's difficult to win an Olympic medal, but it's not difficult to win an Olympic medal because you can to at least give yourself the chance of doing that. Then it comes to luck right at the end or whatever, but you shouldn't be falling behind. It's far simpler than it is, and you can see this with both the men's and the women's hockey team. And it's something quite extraordinary that the women, they didn't win a medal, but their story still resonates with all of us. I was trying to interview them just before Tokyo, and of course then there was COVID. But then they came and wrote their own story almost.
Yeah.
It's quite an inspirational bunch of athletes, and through them you can see how simple it is to get to the particular point, that to give themselves a chance of being on a medal podium after how many ever years of trying.
Sharda, do you also see a shift in the patriarchal way of running administration? Because I remember a time when you said a women's team is going, especially a hockey team, you always had a woman manager. She had nothing to do, but she was more like the matron of the team. We've seen that. I mean, we've had an all-men's team going with, say, a woman physio or something. Do you see that shift also contributing in terms of changing mindsets?
I think the moment the input of professionals into it, whether they were male or female, has made a massive difference. So you had Wayne Lombard, who was the physiotherapist. I mean, he was the scientific advisor. I keep forgetting, I call him physiotherapist. Scientific advisor to the team. Each and everyone in that team, including the coach, thank Wayne for the work that he did. Thank Wayne Lombard for the work that he did. There are still some patriarchal rules, I think, that are still in place in that camp. For example, that I don't know if it's still happening because of COVID. It's all changed, but 9:30 is curfew time, PM, in the Sai hostel in Kengeri in Bangalore, and it's a beautiful, huge, sprawling campus. But the girls have to be in by 9:30 and locked, and the boys can be around, of course, doing whatever they want till whatever time of night.
Half an hour more than that.
Yeah. So, you would think that, and so now they have a female coach, Yannicka Schockman, who was, I think, Nandini, she was the
scientific.
She was the analytical coach. She's an Olympic medalist herself, a double Olympian, triple Olympian, if I'm not wrong. And she's an Olympic gold medalist from Athens Olympics. So very, very qualified staff right now.
There she speaks. Okay, Nandini, I'll quickly move over to you. We were talking about this team as such, and you've interacted very closely with this team over the last 5-6 years. See, one of the things that really struck me in the build-up to the Olympics in the pre-COVID times was the team's meeting room. So the team has, in the women's hostel, there's a meeting room where there were frames of newspaper clippings. Where I think it was Rani's initiative, where they would get clippings of articles written about the team, and they would paste it and say, "This is us." And it wasn't a pressure tactic, but to make people realize people are watching us. Nandini, how do you see the team then and now, as a journalist and now as a PR person?
Honestly, Manuja, I think this has been an emotional journey for me with them. I started working with them just before the Rio Olympic Games. And I was a sports person myself. I was a national medalist in swimming, and I wasn't unfamiliar with the struggles, sports people go through in their careers to make it big. I myself struggled. I'd lost my dad when I was 7, and then my mom used to take care of my swimming needs single-handedly. I remember those days when she would probably pawn her jewelry to, afford to go for a nationals, which would cost about 20,000 or 30,000 rupees per national. So it was a struggle. But then after that, when I moved on as a journalist, we are, of course, very familiar with this whole rags to riches stories, right? We've interacted with athletes who've been through that struggle. But honestly, in 16, when I started working with this group of girls, I was appalled. I was absolutely, I didn't know how to express myself when they were telling me about their stories. Honestly, initially, it was even difficult to get them to open up about, the difficulties they came from into the sport. And when they started talking about it, I was quite, like when you have financial challenges, of course, you try and get a loan somewhere, then you go for nationals or you go for a camp and stuff like that. But when you don't have 2 meals a day to eat, how do you think of sports? How do you think of going to the training ground? You don't have shoes to wear. You don't have t-shirt to wear, these are the backgrounds these girls came from. And I was very, very, very shocked and very surprised. Of course, you mentioned about Rani. Everyone's aware of her story. Her dad, there were days he would pull a cart which would be as heavy as 60, 70 kilos, I think, and he would get only 80 rupees for that whole day's effort. And we had Neha, whose father was an alcoholic, and her mother toiled so much to get those three girls in the family to have 3 square meals a day. So I'm sure we will talk about these individual stories going ahead, but there's been a marked difference from the team which I worked with in Rio Olympics to the team that transformed into playing the Tokyo Olympic Games. And I think this journey itself was that of it was a mind change, and why those posters that you saw in the meeting room was to kind of reinstate to the team that we can do it. They started calling themselves Bharat ki Sherniya, and they wanted to tell themselves, not so much to the world, but they wanted to tell themselves that, no matter what challenges, we are here to achieve and we can do it. I just want to point out that, how you were talking about that checkered past that women's team had over the last 2-3 decades. There was a time when the federation refused to include women's hockey, as part of the national scheme of things, which was why Indian Hockey Federation was de-recognized by the International Federation. And, from then, 12 years ago, 13 years ago, from then to now, there has been, a collective effort, I think, to bring this team to wherever they are. But of course, hats off to the girls for facing everything that they did to actually make their own today, and be an inspiration for that many more women in the country now. Could be from any walks of life. Really, on a day, they have inspired me. I've never played hockey, but on a day, they have inspired me, So I think I'm really looking forward to more things coming out in this session. And yeah.
The three of us will talk through the key players that we're featuring today. Nandini, on Navjot.
So Navjot, she is from Haryana. She is one of those girls who, again, face that patriarchal society. Our girls, daughters can't step out of the house, wear shorts and go and play hockey. Her father worked as a mechanic. So again, comes from a very difficult economic background. And she began her journey in Shabad. So Shabad is the hockey bed, particularly for women hockey players. A lot of former players have come from that district. And you have Coach Baldev, a legendary coach over there, who I know if you talk to the girls, they'll tell you that he made their life hell every day, but he made them the best in hockey. Absolutely. So I think Navjot started, I think, a little bit after Rani Rampal. I think this must be 2005, 2004, that time.
5.
And she's a fantastic forward. She's contributed to Indians' forward line tremendously over this last decade. She's a double Olympian. She was there in Rio Olympics.
Yes.
She did fantastic for the team in Tokyo as well. A complete team player. And she's a champion. She's fantastic. Gurjeet, I mean, she's become super famous, I must say, in this last 5 years at least. 2017 onwards, she's been in the limelight. But I must tell you, she actually came into the national scene in 2014. And that's when she entered the national camp. And she also did get a chance to play for the Indian team back then. But that was the only outing she had. She couldn't really prove herself as a very good drag flicker. Back then, there was another girl called Jasprit, back then. And she hadn't impressed, I think, the setup, as a defender back then. But she went back, she worked on her skills, she was patient enough for the next 3 years to come back into the reckoning. And she was called back in 2017 after Shod Marine took over from Neil Hogwood. And Gurjeet's background, she again comes from a very small village in Punjab, where they had zero infrastructure for hockey. And her father, I think, used to ride her on a cycle, about 60 kilometers to a different a ground, which was a gravel ground, I think. And she started playing over there. So again, she has seen fair bit of struggles herself, and she comes from a
Gurjeet also one of those who changed her diet plans. She had to turn.
Yes.
She was a vegetarian before.
Absolutely, she's
Yes.
still a vegetarian, and
just to give you guys a little this thing, I remember a time when one of Gurjeet's biggest nightmare used to be meals. Because there was only that much of paneer and the other milk and soya that the coaches would allow. So they said you could at least, especially because of her shoulder and it needed to be powerful. I think that's when when they said, this is your Olympic dream, and one of the things that you will have to do is start eating egg. I think she couldn't get past chicken, but egg was one of the things she started
absolutely
eating.
And I'm me, I'm one of them who thinks that non-veg is a must on a daily basis, especially if you're a sports person. And Gurjeet tells me, Didi, main to paneer bhi nahi khati hu, I hate paneer. And I was like, where's your energy coming from then, So yes, you were absolutely right about her diet plan. She actually lost, I think, 10-12 kilos in 17 when she came into the team. And I mean, she also comes from a very conservative sect, in Punjab, where even there, their girls are not allowed to, wear shorts or, show too much of, body, if I can say so. But again, she's also beaten those challenges. And
because I remember when she first came into the camp about 6-7 years ago, for a long time, she wouldn't play without wearing tights.
Yes, she would wear full.
That was a social inhibition I think she had to get over.
Some of them still wear tights, right? A couple of them still wear tights. Like 1 or 2 people I've seen wear. I think Grace wears.
They wear skins. Gurjeet, yes, of course, for that conservative background purpose, she would be a bit hesitant. And I must tell you, how her confidence has also changed over the years. When she came into the team, she couldn't look at you in your eyes and speak to you. They were all that, held back. They didn't know whether they should say this or that. They were too scared to speak to a new person they were not familiar with. They wouldn't look up, to the coach. They would always keep their eyes down. That's how you're brought up, right?
And every male player was a bhaiya.
Every male player was a bhaiya, and their compatriot was a didi. So
and I think here, I mean, maybe the audience that's watching us now is informed about these things, but this is something that so many Indian female athletes have to go through. This sort of, this sort of trying to recover from inhibition. So how does that translate itself in a field of play? You wonder how they do it, but they somehow manage. And this hockey team is full of these examples of players of this kind that have then literally found on the field, they find themselves almost. It's like on the field, they turn into who they are inside actually, which is like just, I mean, imagine at one point it was said that Gurjeet was the best drag flicker in the world, and so this girl who could look you in the eye was able to do this, and when she hits it, it'll break your teeth if you're anywhere, if you sort of stop it in the way.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And we could like stop and talk for half an hour on each of them.
Yes.
I know all of us can. We've been such immense admirers of all these players. Deep Grace, again, she comes from this tribal belt in Odisha. She's from the Sundargarh region, small village called Luldiki, I think. And her brothers used to play hockey, which is how she came into the sport as well. But in Odisha, it's a different, while in the north, it's more patriarchal and your girls are not allowed to go out. In Odisha's tribal belt, it's a bit different. They want their kids to go play hockey. They want their girls to go play hockey. In fact, I was told that they have a custom where when the girl gets married and if she's played hockey, they actually give a stick as, gift or dowry.
Some of the tribes still do that, yes.
They still do that. So she comes from that culture, and And she's been a fantastic defender for the Indian team. She's been one of the backbones, and she was also part of that 2013 Junior World Cup team, which won bronze medal. They had beaten England in a shootout back
Yes.
then. And according to me, I mean, I've spoken to some of the players also, and they also agree that that was the starting, that was the start
Yeah.
of this team's climb in international hockey. You had Deep Grace, you had Rani, you had Sushila in that team, you had
Yes.
Navjot Kaur,
Navjot.
you had Vandana, you
Navneet,
had
Navneet
Navneet.
also.
Yeah,
Navneet
you
also.
had
Vandana.
Navneet.
Yeah.
Shada, I'll quickly break away a little here. Do you think when we talk about 2013, there was also a shift in ambition? Because when they start off, given the economic backgrounds and the social setup most of these players come from, the first thing they think about is a job security. More often than not, it kind of becomes saying that, एक railways का job लग जाएगा, एक police का job लग जाएगा, तो I find that financial stability at home. Do you think, in the last, say, 9 years, that shifted to saying, there's a bigger purpose in playing the sport? Yes, everybody wants to represent the country. Everybody wants to, play at the Asian Games, Commonwealth. But in terms of a purpose, there was a shift. How do you see that, Shanta?
I would say that, when I started sports journalism, this was the stick with which administrators used to beat athletes over the head with and say, "Arey, unko to bas job hi chahiye." Like we need jobs to function, but athletes have to function on patriotism and fresh air, and they don't need jobs.
Yes.
So that was the thing that was there. And of course, this is very, very important, a livelihood issue for them. But I think I remember Rani telling me quite recently at one point, she said, look, when they tried to qualify for the Olympics, and I think that was the first time she had started playing by then. She was a very young player. And just about she said, I saw when they failed to qualify, I saw them just weeping buckets. And she said, I didn't want to be in that place again. I didn't want to be like them. I wanted to be at the Olympics. I wanted to be part of that. And I think her role, as well as her, Sushila, Savita, as leaders of the team is very, very important. And Deep Grace also is very, very important, is to say that, look, we can be better. Together we can be better. And now, of course, they have literally set the benchmark. They set the benchmark for what our women's athletes must do, our women's teams particularly must do. And I think when you see, it's why Rani's, this is so important, because she's able to articulate that and tell it to the world in that sense. So she comes from Haryana, where, as Nandini was saying, you're not supposed to be. She always said, my family used to tell me, log kya kahenge? She said, who are these log? Introduce me to these log, please. I want to meet you. So she had that, and hockey has given them a lot, particularly the girls, I would say, has given them so much of confidence. And because of the fact that they are able to provide for their families some financial sort of security if they do well, and that's how it's almost like it turns into a one thing after another. It's like a domino effect that keeps growing, which you've seen what has happened here when they made the semifinals. It's like the coach Short said that you're crying today, but you have no idea what you have done. And I don't think they understood it after they lost that bronze medal. That it's like the cycle. I mean, you can't go back from now. There is no chance that you'll be allowed to go back from here for women's hockey.
A couple of other players I would, Vandana is somebody we would love to talk about.
So Vandana actually is one of the senior most players in the team. As I was saying, she was also part of that Junior World Cup team, which won bronze. And she recently finished 250 international caps for India. And that's a huge feat. She comes from Haridwar. That's where she's from.
Monica
Vandana.
Malik is also one of those older girls from that junior World Cup team.
Okay, just to talk about Nisha, why I probably she's okay. I have a few favorites in terms of stories, and maybe Nisha is one of them. Again, the kind of journey she's had, and when we talk about Nisha, Sharda, you'll probably remember Pritam Rani Siwach more than
Yeah.
Definitely more than Nandini and me. I know, Sharda, I'm not pointing out anything about a generation here.
Yes,
Yeah.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. So, one, Preetam Rani Siwat's contribution to women's hockey, where, in Sonpet, where she has her academy, and a lot of these girls have come up from. The reason why Nisha Varsi's story for me is special is the background she comes from, the cultural background she comes from, the religious background she comes from. And I remember the first time I spoke to her for a one-on-one interview was probably in the run-up to the Olympics. And she asked me, "Di, aap mujhse kyun baat karna chahte?" So I said, "Aapka kahani sunna hai mujhe. Ordinary kahani hai." I said, "Acha bol do." And then she spoke about, her father being a tailor who had a stroke way back in 2015, which left him paralyzed and forced him to quit. Her mother worked in a foam manufacturing factory up until the time when Nisha landed a job with the railways, and she was actually, earning enough for her mom to stay at home. Like each one of them have a story to tell. I remember a time, when Nandini was talking about the little things that parents sacrifice, diet. She was saying they were 4 siblings, and for them to have those 2 square meals was difficult, and a journey of her mother itself. I mean, in each of these girls' lives, the mothers, I mean, yes, it's equal parenting, but the mothers have played such a huge role. Her mother, Mehroom, if I'm not wrong, is her mom's name. She was initially reluctant to allow her daughter to play the sport, then again, because of societal pressure. But then she went, seeing the child's passion, she went from saying, "No, you can't play," to waking up at 4:30 so she could, get her daughter some food before she leaves. And Nisha left home at 5 o'clock every single morning, up until the time her dad could drop her. He would again, drop her on a cycle. Yes, that's where I think Haryana played a huge role. Sharda, I'll just again break away a little bit. States and their contribution to sport. Uh, you've of course covered sports policies and administration over a long period of time. Haryana's contribution, Sharda, because most of these girls come from Shabad.
Yeah, enormous. Haryana's contribution has been enormous in sport because they are able to tell their athletes that, look, you do well, you will get rewarded. You will get rewarded in not just a felicitation function in which they'll give you a garland and a bouquet and some check for very little. That you will be rewarded substantially. And I think this started particularly after the 2010 Commonwealth Games, where all states and other athletes in other states said, "Oh, like Haryana made them, just went all out of its way to reward its athletes, whether it was checks, whether it was jobs, whether it was," and to say that, look, this is what our sports policy is. Therefore, you'll find a lot more both girls and boys taking to sport that in which they see that there are livelihoods there. I think we must remember fundamentally, no matter what the sport is, outside, I think, of golf, maybe not to be mean about golf, but just golf, it's a livelihood issue. Sport is a livelihood for people. It is not a leisure thing that happens in India. It's a livelihood. It's a subject of livelihood in India. And that's why you see all these stories. Preetam Rani Siwat's academy is part of that whole cycle of Haryana rewarding athletes, rewarding coaches, and the fact that there's a woman who runs her own academy is also a rare thing, but that will just attract more girls to it. I think also there has been a shift in Indian coaching, whereas the coaching habits of older coaches, which is almost like, I am Dronacharya and I can cut off your thumb and it doesn't matter, I'm your coach, you have to listen to me. That is changing now. And mercifully that is changing, because you heard stories of coaches actually physically hitting girls, right? So that is also changing in a way which is extraordinary. And Nisha and Neha are almost like neighbors, and they come from it's like being fellow sisters in this whole sort of enterprise. And it just, every girl, like, you can make a biopic on her life, literally. It's like that.
True. Again, another story which really touches hearts, I would say, is Saimi's story. I know, Nandini, she's also one of your favorites.
Yeah.
And I remember, when I first spoke to Lalbi, she was like, I actually didn't know in what language to speak to her, because Mizo, I think, was the only language she knew.
Yes.
No English, no Hindi. And I remember, I think we virtually spoke in sign language.
Yes.
And that was the time, I mean, the little efforts these kids were making back. She was still a teenager then. And I remember she had a Mizo Hindi dictionary.
Learn 30 days. 30 days.
Yeah,
Learn
30 days.
Hindi, English in 30 days.
In 30 days. And, when you talk about their journeys, I remember, I think she made her debut when Harinder Singh was the coach.
Yes, around that time.
Yeah, around the time when Harinder Singh was the coach, and she got a royal shelling from him because he kept, telling her what to do, and she had no clue.
Yeah.
For the simple reason, because he was newly appointed, she failed to respond to him barking instructions from the sideline because she just couldn't follow. So when she came back, I think Rani was the one who explained to Harinder and said, listen, she doesn't know language.
The best part was she couldn't even understand the galis Harinder sir was giving her.
Yes.
She just figured that she had to sit out of the game for a couple of minutes until, she was told, she understood what she had to do. This was, I think, in the Asia Cup.
Yes.
It was, now seems like a very funny incident, but I know for her it was really, really hard.
And Manad, I think the first, her favorite 2 words was "bahut acha," because that's the only thing she said was easy for her to learn. Yes. Then again, when you've come into a team when you're 14, 15, away from family for the first time, Nandini, throw some light on
So she's the first player we have from Mizoram in the team, and she comes from Kolasib. And her father, I think, worked as a carpenter, and her chacha also worked as a carpenter. Again, daily wages, and very big family. In fact, I think their siblings are some 6 or 7 siblings. So again, it was hand to mouth situation, for them back in the day. And she took a lot of interest in hockey because unlike how, Northeast is popular for football, Sharda has been there and she's actually documented that, in Indian football. Yes. But Shami actually wanted, she was fascinated by hockey, the way, you can move around, maneuver with the stick. So interestingly, when she got selected for the National Academy in Delhi. So that's where, a complete turnaround happened for her in her career. And interestingly, her mother thought, she should go there simply because her daughter will get better nutrition, probably better education. And then we'll see, they're not even thinking as far as the Indian team or a job. For them, when their daughter is 15, 16, they are just thinking, okay, she's going to get a better life than she can get here. She can get better nutrition if she goes there, and she's going to have somebody to take care of her in that program. So that's how,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, just one more thing here, Manuja, I wanted to point out, we rarely sort of praise the government. But in this case, you suddenly realize that there is actually in the Northeast, there was a hockey center where Syami was found and where she was sort of almost scouted from and then sent to the national camp. So there are many flaws in Indian sporting ecosystem, but the fact that there are these size centers everywhere. It's like you throw a stone on a map and you hit a size center. So and they have many flaws. There are whatever you can say, but they are there. As in they have played a great role in being able to suck talent out of the most remote corners of the country. And Kolasib, I think, is on the where Syami comes from. It's on the border where they had the last fight with Assam and all. It's there. So it'll take hours to get from Kolasib to Aizawl or to get to Guwahati or whatever it is. But if there's a Sai center, that's where the girl will go,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Whereas
Shraddha, I
Haryana,
quite agree with you.
yeah.
I quite agree with you on this because I remember 2004, I think, was when Rani came into the team. 4-5. The late MK Kaushik was the coach. And I remember this really tiny, skinny looking girl. And I asked him, I said, Kaushik, what is she doing in the team? I mean, this is like a really tiny girl. And he said, you haven't seen her play, so don't judge her by her size. And I think it didn't take her long to prove me wrong that, size really didn't matter. The fact that she was 13, 14 didn't matter. But yeah, Shraddha, like you said, the system as such. Staying with the system and Rani here. Rani for me, I think very quickly Rani now is like, and I'm not going to compare her to any man, but Rani is Rani Rampal. Okay, and we all know who she is. When I think about Rani, yes, I remember this young kid from Haryana who, went into the mess. I remember thinking that, she needs, so, back then they didn't have dietitians and stuff like that. So the idea of juice used to be the Tetra pack of your Maaza and your Bejoys and stuff like that, which was loaded with sugar, which I think now they just like frown upon it. And one of the things that Rani looked forward to back then was that extra one. So, you had these other players who like, oh, bachi hai, and, they'll part with their Bejoys. I think I saw more joy in that than, she had joy in actually, going to the ground early in the morning and things. But her transformation into a leader, I think, or rather maturity of a player who could lead, I'm not talking leader in the sense in terms of captaincy as such, I think started with the heartbreak of not qualifying in 2008. I think that thing of being so close to qualifying and not being able to qualify, I think that turned her around as a player. Shraddha, you've also seen her right from her formative days. What do you think she brings to the team as a leader?
I think she's a remarkable leader because she has an understanding of what it means to be the senior most person in terms of, or the most articulate senior most person. She's a very serious person. When you sort of meet her formally, she can crack a joke or two, but she's very serious. She reads a lot. She's obsessed with reading. She's always studying for something.
Masters.
Yeah, she's done a master's in English romantic age or something like that or the other. And so she's very conscious of self-improvement, both as a player and as what she's like as a leader. And she always says, I have always wanted to be a strong woman. She said, I always wanted to be a strong woman, and that's not, and so she understands the background that she came from. And at one time she said, when I remember my life in basically as a young girl growing up in what was poverty, said, mere rongte khade ho jate, which means I get, my skin, the hair stands up on end. It was like that frightening is what it was. And she's seen what she's able to do. And she's quite remarkable. And I find her one of the most remarkable athletes that I have met because of the fact that she's playing a sport where no one gives any damn about until one point, till I would say 4 years ago or whatever it was. No one cared about the women's team pretty much. It was like you're the second hand. The people are getting the names of the captain wrong. They're calling them something else. They're doing all kinds of nonsense you're listening to. But to still thinking that it does mean something, and she can use it, and she can do that to everybody. So the story that you told of Syami is that she was Rani and she were roommates for a while, and that's how Syami learned her Hindi.
Yes.
So you have her taking part in this whole sort of exercise. I mean, she's just an extraordinary person. Her body is completely broken down, but she's still there. And I'll tell one very quick funny story during I'm looking at the watch. During the training, something was going on, and the coach was yelling at the faster players to try and hustle her and sort of basically sort of push her around, make sure that she doesn't have space to move, and she's always able to get away because she's saying, look, she's old and she's slow, and you're not able to sort of crowd her and get the ball from her, tackle the ball and take it from her. And Rani told him that they are faster in their bodies, but I am faster in my mind. So that's what I can do. And she's her sense of the kind of player she is. I want people who are here. I can see the number have gone up to a nice round figure from 28 to 30. Well done, everyone. Thank you for coming. I think people should just go and watch her score goals. She just turns up where you don't think she's going to turn up. She's like this creature who she's slow. She's all kinds of things, but when the ball is with her, that's what showed Marine. I did a piece on that, and he just gave such a great quote. He said, when she has the ball with her, then she knows what to do, and she knows very clearly and very slowly she can operate. Everybody else around her is falling apart. They are having hysterics, they are running, they're doing. Rani is thinking clearly. I mean, we could talk again forever, but
I think one of the things she really exhibited this in, and I think Nandini was with me that day when we were actually sitting next to each other. And hockey is a sport, men or women. It kind of brings out a fan in a journalist as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Football also does that to me.
Yes.
CFC does.
Confess. Yes.
Confession. So Nandini and I were sitting together at the Kalinga Stadium, the qualifiers.
Cool.
And I remember.
Explain the whole thing for those who didn't watch the qualifiers. Just say what happened.
Nandini, you go ahead, because I think I kept ducking into my computer too often to see if
So
was going to reach a deadline.
We were playing USA, and the girls were playing in Kalinga Hockey Stadium for the first time. Funnily enough, all these girls have played for India for the last 15, 12 years or whatever, but never played in India so much. So they were playing in Bhubaneswar for the first time. They were super excited. And we were taking on USA, a good team in the qualifiers. And you know how in Odisha, when you have a hockey tournament, the entire state turns up in the stadium. It's that packed. And it was a packed stadium. And the girls took complete advantage of that. And, they scored we won 5-1, I think, in that first match. And we had a huge goal difference, and in the second match we had to just keep up that momentum, and we knew we are through. I think all of us were already celebrating after that first match, oh yeah, the girls have won and all. But in the second match, USA completely turned it around for us, and they scored a number of goals, I think, in the first half itself.
Yes.
And we were behind by, I think, 4 goals and at halftime. Yeah. And I remember Manuja was sitting like this, and she was like, "What are they doing? What are they doing?" I think if there was no barricade or something, she would have jumped onto the pitch and played herself. She was, I think, that emotional. And she had brought Prajwal Hegde with her, who is our legendary tennis writer from Times of India. And Prajwal also was like, "Oh my God, don't tell me I jinxed the team." But that was the emotions coming out that day. And Shard was absolutely angry. The coach, when he went in at halftime, we thought, he's going to shoot somebody, or he's just going to kill somebody, just to take off his frustration.
He charged him.
He just charged in. I think he banged something inside, the changing room, just to, show his anger to the girls. And he's like, "What are you guys doing? Have you forgotten whatever you've been through in your life for, to just make it to the next Olympic Games?" And then he somehow charged them up, and we came back in the second quarter, and players were very, very nervous. You could see in their body language, that nothing was working for them. And then suddenly this miracle happened where Rani, she was in the right place at the right time. Sharda, you say it all the time,
Yes.
She's there in the right place at the right time. She found a space in the circle, and I think she was past the ball.
There was one mistake that came towards her, and she had it, and she was able to score that goal. Almost with her back to the goal. She was able to score.
Exactly. It literally looked like, it became slow motion. The way she scored the goal, and it was fantastic. And then we ended up winning by just 1 goal aggregate, and we went into the Tokyo Olympics. And I remember when they came back to the national camp, I think Shard, he never usually compliments or singles out one player, but I think here, when they came back to the camp after that break, after the Olympic qualifier, he said, thank your captain, thank Rani. It's because of her that you're going into the Olympic Games. And I think that moment, even Rani was a bit like, oh my God, he's actually complimenting me in front of everyone like this. I think she felt a bit awkward, but she really was responsible. And imagine you're playing in front of not only your home crowd, you have the sports minister, you have the Indian Olympic Association president, you have everybody in your federation.
You had the Odisha CM there.
You have the Odisha CM there. Everything is at stake, and you had to win. So my God, it was quite a crazy outing.
Shada, staying with. Go ahead. No, Shada, go ahead.
No, I said maybe from here we could go to the Vandana slide, Lekha. If you can find the Vandana Kataria slide. Another sort of aspect of Rani's sort of leadership came out when someone in the audience has also made a comment about this, about how Vandana's house, after India lost their bronze medal match, some people sort of hurled casteist abuse at Vandana. One of the people in the audience has asked a question, and Rani stood up and she said that I hate this. Stop it. Band karo isko. And she was in a press conference. She stood by her player. This is Dipankar has talked about it. So and again, Vandana's story, I must tell you a Wayne Lombard story, who said that Vandana is a senior player. Again, she's 29, but she still works the hardest and she still wants to be the fastest and the strongest and to show every junior player that, look, this is what work is. This is what it means to work. Right? This is what it means to give everything. She is physically a very small girl. If you see her, you think that she could be tossed aside by anybody, but she is so quick. And she's 29, and she's able to compete physically with the younger girls as well. She's able to keep up with them, and she scored a hat trick against South Africa, which is a match that was a must win for us in Tokyo. And I let Nandini take over from here. I couldn't resist the story of that went on the question. Yeah.
Just before coming to Vandana, I just wanted to say one thing about Rani is that, she always repeats this whenever we are chatting, and she says, when I started playing hockey, everyone said, बहुत बदनामी होगा तुम्हारा, to her parents, बदनाम कर देगी लड़की, किसी के साथ भाग जाएगी, क्या sport खेलेगी. That's the country we live in. I don't think, people will say this to a male athlete. Would anyone have told this to Neeraj or Abhinav Bindra that if you let your boy play sport, किसी लड़की के साथ भाग जाएगी, that, but to a girl, they say that. And Rani was so conscious about this her entire life that she's like, Didi, if I ended up doing that, I know, a generation of girls wouldn't be allowed to come and play sport. That's the effect it would have. So, that is the responsibility I'm carrying on my shoulders. And I would never do that, to my parents because of this. So, imagine, what kind of situations our players have to go through. Elsewhere in the world, you're not beating all these challenges. You're only looking at performing, for your country. But here you're facing so many other adversities. And Vandana's is a similar situation, and imagine you're in the middle of the Olympic Games and you're wondering whether your family is safe back home or not. And it's such a sad situation. And I believe, this has happened to her family a couple of times. And that's the sad part, sad affairs in our country. And Rani simply said, we play for India. We have so many girls from different religions. There are Christians, there are Muslims, there are, Sikhs in our team, but Hindus are there. But we've never brought religion into the sport. But why are you doing it now? And she said, it's such a shameful situation and stop it. That's what she said. And Vandana, something that was really sad was, again, her father was the person responsible for her to come into the sport. He backed her completely. And I think he was, he used to be a milk vendor, if I'm not wrong, initially, when she picked up the hockey stick. And and then he got a job as a fourth grade clerk or something like that in a factory. And she shared a very personal, very, very close relationship with her father. And it was during the second wave that she lost her dad, and they had just come back from a break, and they had entered the camp, and that was supposed to be the last camp before they left for the Olympic Games. And I think 1 week into the camp, she got news that he had passed away, and it was absolutely shocking, I think, for the entire team. And she said, "Okay, I won't go back because I'll have to quarantine myself again. And then I don't want to come back with an infection also, and then put everyone else in my team at risk." So these are the sacrifices really that, these girls have made. And Vandana understood very well that, her father was everything for her, and I wish he stayed until to watch these girls play in Tokyo the way they did. But now that she has everything, she got immense amount of cash awards and everything, a better life now. But her father is not part of it, and I think she regrets that even to this day. But look at the sacrifices, right? These girls have made. So.
Staying with sacrifices, I'll quickly, Sharda, move on to coaching. Okay, one of the things that Jean Marin kind of drilled into the girls was, win or lose, make the other teams remember the day you played them, or the day they played you. It's something he often told the girls. But a journey which was so checkered, when I say even in the 4-year cycle, in terms of coaching, it was a musical chair. It was almost like, oh, this was not good enough for men's team, throw the coach into the women's team. I mean, you had Jean Marin, Harinder Singh, and Jean Marin back. And contrasting styles of coaching, behavior, attitude, and all in a span of, say, 2.5, 3 years of the crucial time when they were preparing for the Olympics. What does that say to you about the girls?
When this happened, so there were 3 coaching changes. It started from Neil Hogwood
yes,
to Harinder, back to short, right? And they just kept doing that. When I think the girls themselves, when I was interviewing them, Nikki Pradhan said that we decided that, listen, we have to do this ourselves. It really doesn't matter who the coach is, we have to do this ourselves. I remember Nandini was telling me this when I had gone to the Sai campus for one of the times I'd gone there. And she said they put up this big poster and they said, we have to do it, whoever the coach is, we have to do it ourselves. What they was definitely helped by, and the fact that this changed for them is the fact that when Short came back to the team, he was able to kind of switch back onto what he thought he had begun when he had a brief period in 2018 or so, when after the Commonwealth game? No, from August, for a brief period that when he was there. So when he thought they were making progress, and then he was taken back and he was brought back again. So he was able to pick up and work with them in that sense. And one of the things that he said to them, I think, was that you have to take ownership for what is happening on the field. Every one of you is a leader, and every one of you has to do that. And for him, who's coming from Holland, where the culture is completely different, the hockey's played in a different way, they have a club league. He always was he was a bit perplexed. I don't know what the girls think. I don't know what they're saying. But the point is that the moment he said, when women athletes start to trust you and they believe in you, then they will run through walls for you. He made a very clear distinction between coaching men and coaching Indian men and Indian women. He said and that's what he was able to get back. And one of the great stats that I found, which that's a great quote that he said, that let them remember you how you played, which certainly the English team always did. And the English team, India had a very uneven record with Great Britain. They very difficult to beat Great Britain, and they almost pushed them all the way in that bronze medal match. And then you saw the response that the English team, the GBR team, gave to the Indians. I just want to point out here that the Indian women, this is research by Wayne Lombard that has proved on data that he had, that Indian women were 18% lighter and 4% shorter than the Western players that were there. And 18% lighter is like, I don't know what it is in 20 kilos. It's like 10 kilos lighter straight away, I mean, I'm just trying to work out.
Yes.
My maths is completely, go work it out. So what Short was able to do was to then put into play game patterns that did not involve physicality, that involved speed, skill, and getting out of these situations where that you're caught. And this one Navneet gave me a great quote. She said, I used to feel a bit worried that all these big Australians and players were there, saying, but now I know that you can try and push me, but I'll be able to keep my balance and go out of the way, get out of the way. So he was able to put that into their mind, that this is the way you can play teams that are bigger and physically stronger than you. You have to beat them on speed, and you have to beat them on skill and on the capacity to evade, and how you play in various sort of sections of the field, and how you pass, and how you have to all be leaders and take ownership. I can't do it for you. That was his thing. A wonderful example of a very humane and a coach, which I think all Indian athletes need humane coaches.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Sharda, okay, now that you spoke about Wayne, I don't think the story of this Indian women's hockey team is ever complete without this man. For me, he is one of the heroes of this team. And I remember Rani saying this, and I quote Rani from there, saying that I cried remembering the 3 years I spent pain in my shoulder. I had told Wayne I probably would never be able to hit the ball again. So many days when the team had a break, I would be in the gym working on my fitness. In February, this I'm talking about 2000, what are we now? 21. Sorry, 20.
20.
Okay.
20,
in February, he told me, I know the routine can get boring, but right now we are working for just 2 matches, the Olympic qualifiers. Let's focus on that. You'll know later why we're going through this process. And much like Rani, I think the rest of the team owes a lot of its fitness, which again, helped them go the distance at the Olympics, to Wayne. Yes, I think all of us have interacted extensively with Wayne over a period of time. But Nandini, I want to know from you, okay, Wayne and his contribution to this team.
Absolutely immense, Manuja. I don't even know where to begin, because he actually is a South African and very, very well experienced scientific advisor. And when he came into the team, one of the important things that the team wasn't aware of was how to take care of their bodies. They didn't know much about recovery. They by then had kind of understood what diet is and what is required. You can't have your morning chai, which is this big, and you can't have pani puri, you can't have pizzas and all that. That was already inculcated, from the previous Olympic cycle. But what the girls were still not doing is, recovery. And this is something I think Wayne really made them understand. He made the girls more aware of their body. He made them aware of injury and rehabilitation. I think that was the most important thing. Even someone like a Rani was quite insecure if she said, I have an injury, will I be out of the team? And this is an insecurity many players have, not just in the women's team, but also in the men's team. So they don't openly come out and say, I have a niggle here, I have a pain there, nothing of that sort. They just try and hide it. And Wayne was somebody, when he came in, they brought in this program where they said, listen, if a player is injured, the player doesn't go out of the camp, the player stays. And the player goes through rehabilitation, and this was accepted by the federation as well, and they backed it up. They said, yes, this is the process we need to follow. And you were talking about Rani. I think Rani is, if she's sustaining this long, it's because of Wayne. And he brought in a lot of interesting, things like even tracking periods for women. This is something which is a taboo subject, which not too many people talk of, especially if it's a woman, if it's a man who's training you. But then this support staff, they started tracking, periods, and then how that would slow them on the pitch. What are the issues that they might have in those 4-5 days? These were the things they had to put in a Google spreadsheet. I mean, our girls were never used to a Google. I'm not used to a Google spreadsheet, but they had to do this, and they would have like a point system. You had to get like 100 points every day, and each recovery aspect would have like 10 points. You're sleeping for 40 minutes, you get 10 points. You go in for a hydrotherapy, you have 20 points, so on and so forth. I think these things really helped. And I mean, in yo-yo tests, even the Indian men's cricket team,
Yes.
Sharda, I don't think,
Yeah. So this is a stat that I got. Sorry, Nandini, I'll just interrupt because I've taken the stat down. So their yo-yo average score rose from 17 to 20. I'm not saying what the cricket score is, but I'm just telling you 20.
No, you have to tell what the cricket.
No, Nandini, I don't agree there because this is something. Let me tell you, Wayne made me well aware of, saying that the cricket yo-yo test is entirely different from a hockey yo-yo test. So let's not.
Hockey is a bit more challenging.
And body fat percentages of the team dropped from 27 from 27 to 16. Yes. So that's like almost 11%.
Absolutely.
So just madness. And so we are getting excited with all this data and everything, but it actually manifested itself in a lot of confidence that the team had. In an awareness of what their bodies are capable of doing on the field. You may want to be a particular type of player, but if your body helps you be that way, and one of the stories that Wayne said that when he first came, all the girls used to wear these loose clothes and come to the gym and track pants and everything. And by the end of it, they all were wearing like sleeveless and looking at their muscles in the mirror. And it was fine. It wasn't vanity. Like the guys would do it all the time. Yeah. So the girls would do it too. And that then translated itself, that fitness translated itself into confidence against the opponents as well. Yes. That if you were able to, you saw how they performed in Tokyo, they were there, they were certainly never out of breath. Whatever else they were short on, it was not fitness for sure.
It resulted in the speed with which they started playing, in 17, I still joke about it when I talk to the players. I tell them that in 17, guys, to sit through your 60 minutes was like, it was hard. It was slow. You guys would play so slow, and they couldn't do well against teams like Chile and, much lower ranked teams, and they were struggling, but, and they were out of breath within the second quarter. And if they have conceded too many goals, they can't think of coming back in the third and fourth quarter because their fitness wouldn't support them in this aspect. So I think that was one of the biggest change this support staff, particularly Wayne, brought in. I think he was responsible for that speed with which they played. And even in that bronze medal match, if they could fight it out till that last hooter, it was because of this fitness.
I'll quickly take us through what next for Indian women's hockey. Yes, an Olympic cycle is done and dusted. It's going to be a new phase. I mean, at Paris, you don't know how many of these players are actually going to, how many of them are actually going to make it to Paris. But they've set a benchmark. Sharda, what do you think is the way forward for women's hockey in terms of sustaining this interest? As we speak, I think they just won the Pro League match. Did they, Nandini, against China?
Yes. Okay,
so it's a start. They didn't do too well in the Asia Cup the week before. So you've seen them bounce back today. 3-1 was the score when we started the session. So I don't know what happened after that. I think there was a few minutes left. So, it is exciting times for women's hockey, especially this year, I think, is very crucial. They've made their Pro League debut. You have the Commonwealth Games, you have the Asian Games, you have the World Cup coming up next year. How do you see this team, Sharda?
I think you would want now to set higher standards for them in the sense that we have missed out on so many, we missed out on a medal spot at the World Cup the last time. We missed out on a gold medal at the Asian Games. So you say, okay, fine, now this is what we expect, and this is it's absolutely legitimate, and I think the team would want it. The team would think that yes, we are worthy of that, and we can do it, and we can. So I have another sort of, I could go on for another 5 hours on this topic, but I will not. So someone asks you what chances of a hockey IPL. Now that depends on how people want hockey to be, but you would want these women to be seen on television all the time, playing as many tournaments as they can internationally. But at the same time, you would want there to be, my pet topic is a grassroots structure and a pathway structure, which is like what Shore had said, that look, you need a balance of being in camp and playing regular tournaments, and COVID has become a very handy excuse for sports administrators to just say, chill boss, I don't need to do anything. But they actually do need to do things now. They need to have a proper like a pathway and a ladder in which you can see players there. Look at the amount of talent that there is in the country. Look at where these girls have come from and what they're able to do and what they're able to achieve despite everything, and what the worst thing that could happen is that you just sort of let this all just go away, because what also fears our sports administrators is somebody else becoming more popular than them. But that is my private theory, my paranoid theory, but that's all right. But so you would want there to be sort of an elevation of what is at the grassroots. Let's not just stick them in a camp. Let there be a club league. Let there be a women's hockey IPL. Let's beat the cricket at it. BCCI is struggling to do it. So the world is its oyster, but you need for the hockey administration to kind of. There's another very delicate topic I will not get into because Nandini is here. But anyway, this is what I've said my piece. Yeah.
No, I agree with you, Sharda, because coming to this IPL, I won't box this team into a league. I would say go out and play. I mean, play as like Sharda said, more televised games. It need not be glitz and glamour. We honestly don't need the glitz and glamour of IPL styled league to promote hockey. What I would really want to see is more clubs in India. I mean, closer home in Bangalore. I played hockey myself. And I remember once somebody asked me, what did you all finish? And I said, we finished runners up. I didn't have the heart to tell them there were only 4 teams competing. And
but that's better than 4. That's 4, yeah.
Yes. And the thing was, you don't have a structure. I mean, in a city like Bangalore, where you have a lot of things on hand, whether it's infrastructure, whether it is talent, you don't have. So I think that's where we need to focus. And also, I would love to see the girls go out and play in foreign leagues. I mean, be it in Belgium, in Spain, in France, Holland. I mean, that is what I would want to see. IPL will pass. Nandini.
Yeah. So, actually, I want to point out a reality with this team was until this kind of amazing performance, right from probably 2018 when they beat England in the Commonwealth Games. Before that, not too many top teams wanted to play the Indian team. So if you want to go and play Argentina, or you want to go play Germany or England, you wouldn't get that invite from them, when you have to plan those test events, because why would they want to play a much lower ranked team? They want to play somebody who's equal to them. It's like now the Indian men's team, may not want to play somebody much lower ranked to them because that's not going to help them in any way. So that's how the coaching system also works, right? The support staff and the management.
Yes.
So, but now I'm really expecting, these girls to be able to go and play some of the top teams in the world. And they are going to do that from next month when they start playing the Pro League. Today, they've beaten China by 7-1. That's a magnificent result, I feel. And then they're going to play Netherlands next in Bhubaneswar. This is the first time world number 1 is traveling to India to play here. And you won't believe it, this team hadn't played Netherlands for the last 5 years until they played them in the Tokyo Olympics. Their first match was against Netherlands. So, you never got to play such top teams. But now, thanks to Pro League, I think they will be playing all these top teams in the world. That's going to be a huge help for them when they move on to play Commonwealth Games. And then we have the Asian Games this year, which is going to be an Olympic qualifier again. And then from there on, they just have to build on their performance. And I'm not going to comment on whether we should have a league or not, but of our own, like IPL. But grassroots structure, definitely, I'm with Sharda on this. We should, and with Manuja on this. We need to have a good grassroots system. We do have a lot of women state teams coming into the national championships that happen in the country. And now what the federation has done is they have divided it into, you have departments playing a separate national championships, then you have state teams playing separate national championships, and you have junior national championships where state teams are playing. So they've divided these tournaments so that more people, more teams get to participate. Earlier, that wasn't the case. Only a few teams would end up playing these prestigious national championships, but now, more scope for youngsters to come in. And I believe that is happening after this performance. Particularly, I remember a journalist calling me from Bhopal and saying, "Madam, I want to share this instance with you where this girl, I believe, kept crying to her parents for 4-5 days continuously, saying, I watched the girls play Tokyo Olympics now. I was impressed. I want to start playing hockey. Take me to the academy." So until the parents took her to the academy, she didn't stop crying. So this was a 9 or 10-year-old girl, So if that has happened, then I think the sport is looking in the right direction.
Absolutely. Okay, I think the three of us can go on and on and on, but I'll end this on that note. First of all, a huge shout out for BIC. 3 women talking non-stop on women's hockey.
Thank you for staying on for the full conversation.
So BIC, thank you. And
please share it with your friends and family. You can also leave us a review or rating on iTunes and Apple Podcasts. The crew that makes these podcasts possible is Gaurav Krishna on sound supervision and production, with support from S. Saranaraj and Raghavendra Tenkaila. Artwork and design is by Chandni Venkataraman of Crisscross Design Studio. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel on your favorite podcast platform. It can also be accessed on our website, bangaloreinternationalcentre.org. Do follow us on Instagram for updates on all our programming. This is Lekha Naidu signing off on behalf of everyone at BIC.